What's up, folks? A little change in scenery for those who used to seeing me reporting live in my car like it's a newscast. I'm actually out at my son's football practice, taking in the sights and sounds, smelling the grass and all that stuff. And while I'm out here, there's a few other parents out here too, probably because we really don't have anything else to do. But while I'm out here, it makes me think about all the conversations I have with my son, whether it's about life, whether it's about football, whether it's about school or whatever, as he's getting older, more along as a teenager and developing into ultimately the man, the kind of man he'll be. A question I think we as parents always have to ask is, what are we giving our children? Not materially necessarily, but what are we giving them that feeds their soul, that helps their development, that they can take root in and grow from? I oftentimes have conversations with other parents, and we all like to say these kids are different. These kids are different, and I oftentimes contend the kids aren't so much different. Yeah, the environments may be different, the circumstances may be different, their access to things may be different, but I really don't think that the kids are too much different. I think we as parents are different. Now, it could be a double-edged sword as parents. We fight, we work, we do what we need to do to give them a semblance of a decent life, which is cool, which is what we're supposed to do. But sometimes, does it rob our kids from the things we had to go through that made us who we are, the life lessons that we had to learn to be who we are? Sometimes I think that the softness of life that my kids have, and again, that's a part of that double-edged sword. Nobody wants their kid to grow up and struggle or whatever, but sometimes that softness of life that you provide, the carefree life, I should say, robs them of developing the grit that we grew up with, the hustle mentality that we grew up with. They're growing up in a world or they're growing up in a life where mommy and daddy take care of everything for them, or at least the first person they look to is mommy and daddy. Now, hey, it could be say they are blessed to be in that position to have parents that can be option A, B, or maybe even C. But how long does that the case? How long will that be the case? At what point do you start loosening the ropes and let them figure it out for themselves? I was speaking with my mom earlier, matter of fact, and I said, she was just talking about the different things I did to make money as a kid, and ultimately I got an after school job and stuff like that. But she like, when you wanted something, you went out there, you mowed lawns, you helped your relatives, you painted, you washed cars, you did all different type of stuff to get it. And I said, frankly, I did that because I knew, otherwise I wouldn't get it. My mom and dad worked hard. My dad to this day still works the swing shift at the place he's worked at since 1990, I think it was. He still works there. He's 61, looking forward to retirement, obviously. But he's been working there for however old my youngest sister is. He's a year shy of that, so he's worked there since 1990. But he didn't always make a lot of money, or whatever money he did make went straight to feeding us. They had 4 kids, and my mom worked too, varying jobs over the years and stuff like that. And I had young parents, so there was just probably a lot of things they just didn't know or didn't know better. Sometimes the ignorance and being in financial literacy. So even when they had it, they may not have made the best decisions with it. And what they did focus on was making sure, our birthdays we felt, acknowledged or special, or Christmas was as big as it was. But being a generation beyond that and being a little bit more comfortable, than what my parents were, my kids don't have to figure out, how they're going to do something when it comes to financials. If they want to do something, they just ask, and between me and my wife or whatever other resources we have, it gets done. So that hustle mentality that I grew up with at their age, comparatively, they don't have it. My son, my oldest son, he'll be 15 soon. He mows the lawn now, but for a lot of his early childhood, I had a yard man. Or we lived somewhere where the yard got done, or if not the case, maybe he was just too young to help out. But up until his teenage years, he didn't have to mow the lawn. Now, once he became about 13, I think it was, maybe 14, I said, okay, you're going to start mowing the lawn now. I'm not going to keep paying somebody when I got a teenager in the house. But I would take that same lawnmower that I mowed my family's lawn with around the neighborhood to make money. Back then, it was 5 for the front, 5 for the back. But again, they're not having to grow up thinking about that kind of stuff. I had a candy business, a thriving candy business in middle school. I got suckers or whatever, sold them for 25 cents a pop. I made some bank, man. I made enough to get shoes and clothes and whatever else I wanted to do. But that's just that hustle mentality. Let me make my own money. Now, my kids like money. My kids like to receive money, and we try to even incentivize, chores being done. You get paid for doing chores, but even the prospect of making money and having your own money really didn't appeal to them, because whatever they needed, we provided anyway. We got for, or whatever they wanted, even we got for them anyway. So there wasn't any real lack that they had to perceive, so that to make sure that they had their own money. And not that because you got it out the gutter that your kids necessarily have to get it out the gutter, but we do still have to find ways to instill characteristics that ultimately, when we do release them out in the world, that we're pretty confident that they'll be okay. In a lot of conversations I have with my son is just that, just having those characteristics, man. Like, what type of time, it's time to start thinking about what type of man you ultimately want to be. Being a go-getter, being assertive when you need to be assertive, not being too passive, not watching the world pass you by and take opportunities that you want. Understanding that nobody's going to give you anything. The world isn't fair. If you're counting on fairness, the world ain't the place to look for it. And also instilling the faith. I believe in God. I believe in Christ. That's where my faith lies. And start teaching the pillars so that he may find his own relationship too, ultimately. But yeah, man, it's definitely something I think about a lot, and especially watching my children grow up, having a son, having a daughter who teenagers, and encountering high school, and remembering where I was at that time. Those circumstances may have been different. Maybe I had to grow up a little sooner than they're having to grow up, which again could be a blessing, it's possibly a double-edged sword. But I do still want them to be well-rounded enough to take on the adversities of life. Not be somebody who, not saying that depression isn't real and people don't truly suffer with depression or anxiety. Not to sound callous or anything for people who truly suffer with those things. But I do feel like at times it's an easy crutch. People latch on to depression and anxiety, which cheapens it a bit to me. And it's adversity, man, or woman. You just have to, process it and go through it and overcome it. Don't cheapen a real condition because you just don't know how to deal. So that's what's going on today as I take in practice. I'm watching, getting a little bit of strategy, making sure he do it right. Be some tough conversations on the car ride home. Couple three, man. But yeah, that's the conversation for today. Y'all be blessed.